Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
Glad to be here for this one.
So, today we are taking a magnifying glass to the deepest questions of human existence. God, atheism, and, the origin of evil.
Yeah, the light stuff.
Right, just a casual Tuesday. But seriously, we are asking if our darkest impulses are the work of a cosmic enemy, an underdeveloped frontal lobe, or simply the chaotic reality of a universe without a divine creator.
Exactly.
In this deep dive, we will trace the concept of the devil from ancient theistic mythology straight through to the secular philosophy of Nietzsche and Camus. We are even going to look at literal brain scans of psychopaths.
That's a massive scope. I mean, our mission in this deep dive is to synthesize a really vast array of sources, historical, psychological, neuroscientific research, just to understand how different cultures define evil.
Yeah.
And we're going to focus heavily on the philosophical clash between, a universe governed by God and the existential realities of atheism.
It's going to be a wild ride. And before we jump in, I want to say if you like my channel, please subscribe and hit the like button. It really helps out.
Absolutely.
So to understand the atheistic rejection of the devil, we first have to understand the theistic framework it rebelled against.
Right, the original blueprint.
Yeah. I mean, we have a vast array of sources detailing this, and it really starts thousands of years ago.
It does. If we look back about 3,500 years ago to ancient Egypt, you see one of the earliest roots of a moral system built on the fear of divine consequences.
The weighing of the heart, right?
Exactly. When a person died, their heart was supposedly placed on a literal scale and weighed against the feather of truth.
Wow.
Yeah. And if it was heavy with guilt, you were devoured by a monster. It was the earliest root of moral accountability.
Which is such a brilliant visual metaphor. You convince people that their darkest secrets literally carry physical weight.
It's a highly effective surveillance state for the soul,
Yeah. But having a system of justice is one thing. Having an actual devil is another.
That's true. The idea of an autonomous entity dedicated solely to evil, that takes shape a bit later, especially with Zoroastrianism in ancient Iran.
Right.
They introduced this profound, uncompromising dualism. So you have a supreme god, Ahura Mazda, locked in this eternal struggle against an evil spirit, Angra Mainyu.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because in the early texts of other traditions, that wasn't always the case.
No, not at all.
Like in early Judaism, Satan isn't the arch nemesis, right? He's more like God's quality assurance tester or a prosecuting attorney.
That's a great way to put it. Yahweh is largely presented as the author of both good and evil.
Right, like in the book of Job.
Exactly. The word Satan in Hebrew was originally a title, not a name. It just meant the adversary. He's in the heavenly court, testing people with God's explicit permission.
So he works for the system. He's not trying to burn it down.
Right. The shift toward a purely antagonistic devil happens later, mostly within Christianity and Islam.
Where it becomes a rebellion.
Exactly. In Christian theology, Satan is a fallen angel rebelling out of pride. In Islam, you have Iblis, a jinn who refuses to bow to humanity because he's made of fire and Adam is made of clay.
Oh, wow. So pure arrogance.
Right. He becomes the ultimate enemy of the divine.
But, I have to ask, does viewing evil as an external cosmic monster let humans off the hook too easily?
Oh, the classic "the devil made me do it" defense.
Exactly. If a literal demon is manipulating me, am I really responsible?
Well, originally, this cosmic framework answered a really tough question. If God is good, why is there suffering?
Yeah.
The devil provided an external scapegoat.
Right. It solved the theological math.
But that exact externalization is what secular and atheistic thinkers would eventually tear down.
Which brings us to the atheist turn. When we shift to a secular perspective and you remove God from the equation, what happens to the concept of the devil?
Well, the whole architecture falls apart. Without a devil to blame, evil just becomes a purely human construct.
Yeah. I mean, Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, God is dead. And he didn't mean a literal murder in the sky. He meant the Enlightenment and science had made traditional religious morals lose their authority.
Exactly. And in that void, Satan stops being a literal entity and just becomes a symbol of human rebellion.
And then you have Albert Camus, right, looking at the absurdity of it all.
Yeah, Camus believed we live in an absurd, meaningless universe. For him, Satan is just a metaphor for the chaos we fight when we try to find purpose without gods.
The blame shifts completely to us.
Entirely to human free will.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you have modern groups like Levian Satanists or the Satanic Temple,
Oh, yeah.
and they are completely atheistic. They don't worship a literal devil at all.
Not even a little bit.
Mhm.
They use Satan purely as a symbol for free thought, rationality, and, defiance against oppressive religious dogmas.
It's like Satan got rebranded from the ultimate villain of the universe to the ultimate mascot for skepticism and free will.
It's a total philosophical flip.
But without a divine lawgiver outlining right and wrong, doesn't evil just become a matter of perspective? I mean, isn't that kind of terrifying?
It is terrifying, and that's the profound burden of the atheist view.
Hmm.
If you remove the supernatural boogeyman, evil is entirely born from our choices.
So it demands radical personal responsibility.
Exactly. You can't blame demons anymore. When something awful happens, it's just us.
But if it's just us, if evil is just a human construct and not some spiritual force, how do we explain the truly monstrous people among us?
Like serial killers and psychopaths.
Right. Is it just bad biology?
Well, the sources actually dive into the physical architecture of the brain for this. Dr. Kent Keel did these amazing MRI scans on psychopaths.
Taking MRI machines into maximum security prisons, right?
Yeah. And he scanned a 99th percentile psychopathic killer.
Wow. And what did the scans show?
They showed that the orbital frontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and empathy, was severely underdeveloped.
So for the psychopath, the brain's moral braking system is literally missing.
Literally, physically different from a healthy brain. Evil, in this extreme case, is a biological misfire. There's zero remorse.
That is chilling. But, I mean, most people aren't clinical psychopaths.
Right, the vast majority of us have the hardware to feel empathy.
So do average people still need the idea of God to keep them moral?
That's where Jesse Baring's Princess Alice psychological experiment comes in. It's fascinating.
Oh, I read about this. He left kids alone in a room to play a game, right?
Yeah, a game with a strict rule about not crossing a line on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And when left completely alone, a lot of the kids cheated to win a prize.
Naturally. High reward, zero risk of getting caught.
But then he ran it again. This time, he told the kids that an invisible magical being named Princess Alice was in the room watching them.
And they actually believed it.
Some even tried to touch the empty chair. And the result was staggering. When they thought they were being watched, they were significantly less likely to cheat.
Wait, if the Princess Alice experiment proves we need to believe an invisible entity is watching us to behave, does that imply the atheistic worldview is fighting an uphill battle against our natural psychological need for a God to keep us in check?
It unpacks a massive tension. Logically, we might not need a literal God. But evolutionarily, the concept of an all-seeing judge has been a highly effective tool for curbing selfish behavior.
It's like a cultural surveillance software installed in our brains.
Exactly. Princess Alice serves the exact same psychological function as a deity.
But whether God is a literal reality or just a necessary psychological tool, so many worldviews have basically concluded that the real battleground is the human mind itself.
Yeah, internalizing the devil. Moving away from the monster in the dark.
Right, like in the Baha'i faith.
Yes. They reject a literal devil entirely. For them, Satan is just a metaphor for the human ego, our selfish lower nature.
And the Sikh view is similar, right, with Maya and the Five Thieves.
Exactly. Pride, lust, greed, attachment, anger. These aren't demons. They are internal psychological forces pulling us away from the divine.
Even Sufi Islamic views talk about the ego in a similar way.
Right, the nafs. And what's wild is that modern Zoroastrianism, the very religion that gave us the cosmic war concept, has evolved too.
Really? How so?
Many now see the struggle as entirely internal. Their motto is just good thoughts, good words, good deeds.
That makes it so personal. It's not about cosmic armies, it's about daily choices. Which really brings us to the story of Brian Whitner.
Oh yeah, that is such a powerful story of real-world redemption.
He was a highly violent neo-Nazi skinhead for years.
Yeah, an enforcer, completely consumed by hatred. He described having a hole in his soul.
But then he had a son.
Right. The birth of his son was the catalyst that made him confront the darkness he was a part of.
But he had a massive physical barrier. His face was covered in violent racist tattoos.
Which meant he couldn't just walk away and blend into society. But he found what he called a godly presence.
And he endured, what, over 2 years of excruciating laser tattoo removal?
About 25 sessions.
Yeah.
And he didn't just see it as a medical procedure. He viewed the physical agony as a penance for the suffering he had caused.
So what does this all mean? Whether you're a devout believer fighting a literal demon or a secular humanist fighting your own worst impulses, it's not about fighting monsters in the dark. It's about fighting the mirror.
That is a perfect synthesis.
Mm.
And it echoes a concept in Hinduism, like with the Varanasi exorcism.
Oh, how they handle evil spirits.
Yeah. In those traditions, evil isn't destroyed, it's purified and liberated. It's a misguided energy.
Wow.
Brian Widner's story proves that humans aren't inherently doomed. Evil is a state of disconnection, and redemption is always a choice.
It's a heavy thought, but an uplifting one. I mean, look at the scope of this deep dive today. We went from ancient Egyptian scales of justice and cosmic dragons to Nietzsche's philosophy.
Yeah, and the absurdism of Camus.
Right. And then looking at the psychology of Princess Alice and literal MRI scans of psychopaths.
We really mapped out the evolution of morality.
We did. But before we sign off, I know you had a thought you wanted to leave everyone with.
I do. It's something to mull over. If our ancient ancestors invented the concept of the devil to explain the darkness and chaos of their world, what new devils are we unknowingly creating today to explain the chaos of modern life?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. Are algorithms, social media echo chambers, or artificial intelligence becoming our new invisible tempters?
That is brilliant and terrifying. Something for all of you listening to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.